Welcome to Nashville and Beyond.
I'm Brian Copeland.
And I'm Zach Copeland.
And we're a father-son duo helping people buy, sell, and thrive in Middle Tennessee.
But this isn't just about business. It's also about our family and our community.
It's a front row seat to how we live, work, and serve right here in Music City.
So buckle up as we explore Nashville and Beyond. Well, you know, I never thought I'd be somebody coming back from a quilting convention feeling completely inspired and awestruck and just filled with a sense of childlike wonder, but I did.
I think there is a big line between inspired and obsessed.
Well,
and I will say that since you got back from QuiltCon, it's been more than inspired. It's been like a renewed, you've always been interested, but a renewed passion about quilting.
Yeah, it definitely brought out some of the tism in me for sure. But today's episode is the one about quilts and QuiltCon. What we knew about quilting before I went, what Dad and I experienced in Raleigh, and why I am actually going to be buying a sewing machine this week.
This week's the week.
It is.
Well, you know, before Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the home of this year's QuiltCon, which we'll tell you more about later. I know you're sitting here going, what are we even talking about? Before the Quilt Conference, what did quilts even mean to us? And for me, it's at the basis of it. It's sleep. Because I think we were all kinds of different sleepers. There are people who like to sleep hot and people who like to sleep cold. There are people who like to sleep with something heavy on them and people who like to sleep with nothing on them.
Yeah.
I'm a heavy sleeper. I want weight on me.
Mm-hmm.
I sleep best when there are heavy things on top of me.
Okay.
And so for me, quilts were always the heaviest you could find. You know, now we have weighted blankets and all that now.
Right.
But back in the day, in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, it was quilts.
Yeah.
So my passion for quilts came from that joy of the weighted sleep and just loving the security and the joy and the comfort that gave me.
Yeah, I don't think I actually had any quilts growing up. The only quilts that I remember were like my great-grandmother had these like macrame quilts that were hideous.
Those are the crocheted ones,
Yeah,
right?
like the crocheted
like
quilts.
big doilies put
Yeah,
together.
exactly. That was kind of the only memory I have of quilts growing up.
It's more tapestry, yeah.
But you know, once I got adopted, a gift that y'all got me was a quilt, and it came with a letter that you and Dad wrote, and I loved it, and it was beautiful. And that was the first quilt that I've ever owned, and it was just so beautiful. And so I started kind of getting into quilts then and learning about them, and that's kind of my history with quilts. So
yeah, we kind of evolved because we kind of got addicted to going to Berlin, Ohio, where you know it's like if Amish country had a Las Vegas, this would be it.
Yeah.
It's like the capital of Amish world.
yeah,
And when you go up there, there's all these crafts, and quilts are front and center there. And so I remember the first time we went, we've always owned quilts, but that was kind of the place where it's like, I want a handmade quilt, and I'm not just going to go buy something from Party Barn. Or I can go to Amazon and buy something, but I want something that is stern and robust. And so I remember seeing the price tag for the first time. If that's what it costs in Amish country,
yeah,
out of Amish country, even more. So I remember us buying that first quilt there and then just kind of being addicted to it. So when obviously we'd bought our second quilt up there, and then when your adoption was going through, it was clear that's what we were going to get you. It was like, we've got to get him a quilt. And the joy about real estate and realtors is we're also connected nationwide. And we're also very clear about we're decision makers. I mean, that's what we do for a living. So I knew I couldn't get up there before your adoption because it happened so fast once we got the process going. So I called a friend of mine, Tiffany Meyer, who lives right there in the smack dab middle of Amish country. And I said, I need you to go pick out a quilt and then FaceTime me in and show me what you found. This is, and I sent her some inspiration of what I'd like to see for you. I know your color palette's what you didn't like. Back then, you weren't as color-based as you are now. Because back then, if you remember, you were very black and white-based.
Yeah.
And it's just been over the past few years, it's something like I'll show you clothes, and you're like, I would totally wear that. I'm like, when did this change? There's something about brightness entered your life. And so gave her the direction, and she FaceTimed me up, and she's like, I found the quilt. I'll show you another one, but this is the one.
Yeah.
And there was really no choice there, and I loved it. It was exactly what we wanted for you, and so to get you that was just it just is another layer of the specialness of quilts in our family.
Yeah, and once I started learning more about quilts, especially after the trip we took last week, I began to understand why Amish quilts are the price that they are, and it's because all of the stitching, everything's done by hand, 100%. And even with the machine, a high quality long arm quilting machine, it can take hours and hours and hours to do this with a computerized robotic quilter that's doing it for you. So to do it by hand, it's got to take weeks to get all this stuff done. And they're literally just sitting there stitching stitch by stitch by stitch. So that's kind of why they're so expensive. So why did we decide to go to a quilting convention? Well, I don't remember if it was you or me. It was you.
It goes before that to Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
We at the Country Music Hall of Fame in that art gallery there.
Oh, that's right.
They were doing a quilt art show in an art gallery there. And so we have this family calendar that we talk about on the podcast all the time. And I was like, I think this is something the family would love that is free. And so I put this quilt art show on our calendar, and we went down there, and you found that African-American lady quilt that was like, it was like $10,000, $14,000. And then we started hearing the history of the slavery pieces in it. And you were just mesmerized by it. So that's where it started.
Yeah. So then, is that where you heard about QuiltCon?
I started Googling.
Okay, gotcha.
I was like, there's got to be something out here.
Yeah, so QuiltCon is, for those who don't know, it is the largest quilting convention in the world. Brian's husband, my other dad, Greg, and I went. And while we were there, I mean, we walked into this basically convention center that it's the Raleigh Convention Center, and they had basically, I want to say, 40,000 square feet of floor space.
Or even more.
And it was just filled to the brim. There were probably 10,000 people inside of this room at one time. It was just, I mean, that's maybe an exaggeration, but it was just a ton of people, and all kinds of exhibits and stalls, and it was really, really good to get to go with Dad, because he and I were supposed to go to DC for my birthday one year, and at the last minute he wasn't able to go. And so I just went on a solo trip, and it turned out to be one of the greatest trips I've ever taken. I loved it, and I'll go again. But it was good for us to go and have that time together.
Well, I was supposed to be there.
Yeah, and you were supposed to be there too, and at the last minute you backed out as well. So.
Yeah, it got busy. When I was in Asia, you were super busy.
Yeah.
And then I felt bad because you had done all this work, and then we had buyers coming in who were buying $1 million plus. And we had a seller who had family coming in from out of town, and that's the day they could come. And so I remember texting you and Greg and saying, are y'all going to kill me if I don't go? I've got to be here to work. I just can't put all this off.
Yeah.
Because it's just me and you. I mean, that's the joy of working with us. You get me or you.
Right.
And so y'all were gracious and said, hey, it's fine. And we kind of looked at it as your DC makeup trip.
Yeah.
I had FOMO so bad.
Yeah.
I wanted to be there so bad because we go to Wilson County Fair every year, and you and Greg spend hours, and that's just we're looking at there
maybe 14 quilts or 15 quilts.
It's more than that, but you're looking at 1,500 square feet of quilts there.
Yeah.
And y'all spend hours in there analyzing it all. So I was wanting to go so bad. You even got, for Christmas, you bought your dad a trip to another quilting place. So it's kind of become that social object piece. And so I wanted to go, but I was jet lagged from the Asia trip. I was behind my work from the Asia trip. So, but hearing about it afterwards, oh gosh, it just made me so jealous.
Yeah, and I told as we were pulling up in the Uber to the convention center, I told Dad, I said, "There's going to be a bunch of mammals here."
Yeah,
and we walked in, and 1,000% of it was mammals, with the occasional queer person thrown in there for good measure. And funny, and I don't know if Dad told you this or not, but there was this older gay guy there who saw me at one point.
Yes, I heard all about it.
And then followed me around the booth and the show floor. So that was kind of awkward, but Yeah, it was really cool to go, and that's actually the second convention that I've been to. The first was DragCon that you and I went to. Totally different
Yeah.
experiences. There were
Or
there
were they?
well, there were certainly some similarities, but I have to say QuiltCon was put on much better and
Yeah.
organized much better.
Well, y'all didn't
And
know what you were walking into.
we had no clue what we were walking
Because
into.
none of us had been before.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of the one who guides this stuff. I put your
Mhm.
programs together. I put everything on the calendar for y'all to do. And it's like, I don't know either. And I didn't know if the trade show floor would be just, an hour.
Mhm.
So I was shocked when y'all called me and said, well, we only made it a quarter through. And I'm like, y'all been there for 6 hours.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, and you had actually sent me an email the week before or 2 weeks before and said, hey, go look at the calendar, the schedule of events, tell me what you want to do, and I'll get the tickets for it. So I started going through the calendar of events, and unfortunately everything had already been sold out by that point. But we got there. Thank goodness we didn't have purchased tickets for anything extra because we barely had time to enjoy everything and appreciate everything that was just on the trade show floor. So it was definitely a new experience, and I'm glad that we got to do it.
Well, what was it like once you walked in? What was that actually like when you walked through that door for the first time?
It was overwhelming in the best way. So, whenever Trump was elected the first time and he came down the escalator, do you remember that clip of him coming down the escalator? That was what it felt like coming down the escalator into the trade show floor, because you can't really see how deep and large the room is. And so you're coming down this escalator, and then all of a sudden it's just like the catacombs have opened up, and you can see for miles and miles all these quilts and booths and
That's
stuff.
a good name, QuiltCon.
Yeah,
Like instead of
QuiltCons,
catacombs.
yeah. Yeah,
We coined a new term.
That's right. So yeah, it was really good. I've got the map right here actually for the event because I wanted to have it handy. There were 4 different floors, 4 different levels at the Raleigh Convention Center. So you had the main level where you walk in and you do like your registration. There are all of these smaller rooms that have handiwork, machine sewing classes. Rooms where they're showing off sewing machines. Then you go down, and there's even more classrooms on the second level floor. On the 4th floor on the ballroom, they had 2 really large lecture halls and then a community outreach gallery, which were pretty cool. But then the piece de resistance was, of course, the vendor hall, which was that main floor where we came down off of the escalator. And there were, I don't know if I can count exactly how many booths there were here, at least 50 booths. And some of these booths were the size of school buses, like literally as long and as wide as a school bus, maybe even a single wide trailer. And some of them were small too. Some of them were like the size of a regular.
It's the most Arkansas thing you've ever said
Well,
on this podcast. Maybe the size of a single wide trailer.
Well, everybody knows how big a single wide trailer is, I think. And so anyway, yeah, all the booths were there, and there were just, exhibits from people selling patterns, people selling fabrics and notions, vendors that were selling, like there was this one lady that I interviewed that was selling hand-dyed fabrics from Africa that she had flown over with, and they just set a booth up, and they were just these gorgeous fabrics. There were famous quilters there that I didn't know existed. I had no idea that it was a thing, but there were like the celebrities of the quilting world were there, and there were people lined up for meet and greets with them. And just to see all that, and it was normally I cannot handle that kind of volume in a space and stimulus in a space. But because it's something that I'm so interested in, I was like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
Like I could have been there all 4 days and not had enough.
Yeah.
And so, we went through all those booths, and it was amazing. I mean, they had these industrial sewing machines, which are called long arm quilting machines. So for those of you that don't know, whenever you make a quilt by piecing fabrics together into blocks, and then you sew all of your blocks together and have what's called the top sheet. And then underneath the top sheet is where you put that layer of cotton batting. That's the warmth layer, the insulation layer, and then at the very bottom is your back layer. And typically the back layer is just one piece of fabric that's a color or a pattern or whatever that you've chosen. Then you bind everything up together around the edges, and then you actually start quilting. You have not quilted until that point, because the quilting is actually referring to the stitching that goes all around it and the designs and stuff that build all those patterns. Up until that point, you've just made a blanket, a triple layer blanket. So if you want to quilt a queen or king-sized blanket and make it a quilt by putting all these stitches on it, and you just have a regular domestic sewing machine, you're going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours individually running it through section by section at a time, and then rolling it up and moving down to the next section. And going all the way from the top to the bottom, and then rolling it up inside of the machine, going down to the next section. And that's only if you're doing straight line stitches. If you want to do any kind of patterns, if you want to do any kind of swirls or flowers or trees or birds or whatever, butterflies, any kind of specialty stitching that you want to do, typically you send it off to a professional quilter. And it's basically just some old mamaw that's got a long arm quilting machine. And what I mean by long arm is that the distance between the needle of the sewing machine and where you can't move your arm back anymore is long.
Okay.
Typically on a regular sewing machine, you've got about this much space between where the needle is.
So about a foot.
About 12 inches or so. And then long arms can get up to 20 plus inches. So with a long arm machine, they have these frames that they sit on, and like I said, it can be computerized or robotic, and you're able to get all of these intricate patterns and details, and they can do it super fast. So they were showcasing those machines there at the QuiltCon, and it was so cool
Do
because
they have prices on them?
Oh yeah, they're like $25,000
Oh, dear
plus.
Lord.
I mean, the most expensive one you can get, which includes a frame and a bunch of computers, is like $60,000.
That's more than a single wide trailer.
It is, absolutely. And they've got these handlebars on them, which is it's so funny to see, but there's literally handlebars on it where you can kind of do the free stitching on your own and draw the pattern.
All the quilters who are listening right now are making fun of us right now.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
This is new to us.
Yeah, it's so new to me. So we did all that. The energy of the room was awesome. People were super happy to be there. It was cool to see all these mammals so excited about the quilts, and it was awesome.
Well, it's funny when you think about niche communities. Like if we go to the National Association of Realtors convention, which is 30,000 people,
Yeah.
and you see Christine Hansen there, she's a big star there.
Yeah.
Yet, we had lunch with her last week, and it's just Christine,
Yeah.
who we're hanging out having pharmacy burger with here in Nashville. So it's funny, in these niche communities, there are superstars.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about, one lady who had this big line, and she's like the social justice quilter, and knows everything about these things, have written the books, and you were showing me some of the books. So this real niche community, how they can feel massive in their own world. They would probably leave QuiltCon, and they do leave QuiltCon, and they're a nobody out in the normal world.
Yeah.
But boy, in that world, they're a really big deal.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to think about this creativity as commerce and
Yeah.
how you can make money from that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's not just quilting. Obviously, we're talking about quilting today, but almost any creative endeavor that you set your mind to, you can monetize. And maybe there's another discussion to be had on the state of the world where you have to monetize your creative interests. But it is possible. And with quilting, I've certainly been looking into making quilts for some specific interest groups that I have. And I think I could sell them, I hope. Obviously I need to learn how to quilt first.
Right.
But I'm on my way there to doing that. So I think creativity, there are certainly ways to monetize it and to make money off of it, and we'll see what happens with that. But the real star of the QuiltCon that we went to were the ones that were hanging up on the displays.
Okay.
So half of the room was vendors, and then the other half of the room was a competition. And neither Dad or I knew going into this that there was any kind of competition going on. We just thought I'm just going to go learn about quilts, and there'll be some cool things to buy. It's a national level competition, and
Or global, isn't it?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, you've got people entering pieces in from all over the world, but it's broken down into very specific categories, and I could go into all of them, but I don't think the average listener is going to know.
you're really excited about
Yeah,
this.
I'm so excited about it. If
Yeah.
you can't tell, there's piecing and hand stitching and hand quilting and machine piecing, and basically they're just all different ways to make a quilt. And every different way there is a category that you can enter into. And then obviously there's like a best in show. There are the People's Choice Awards, all those kind of things. Y'all, some of these quilts were just the most intricate, complex, beautiful, colorful. It was just art.
The first one you sent me, the dragonfly one,
yeah,
blew me away.
yeah,
Blew
and
me away.
that one wasn't even a
It wasn't.
competition piece. It was just a pattern that you can buy that some vendor was selling. But it felt like walking into a museum during some points
Which you
of it.
love.
And I do. I love museums,
Yeah.
so I was just in hog heaven.
Art and
Um,
museum both.
It was together. The creativity, the engineering behind all of it, the crafting of it all.
Well, one of the things that shocked me when you texted me was the theme and the messaging behind, because immediately you started texting in the me, you, and Dad group text about the message of resistance.
Yeah, so probably a third, if not more, maybe even like 40% of the quilts were themed on resistance. And while there's not a theme that they
Memo
send
was
out
angry,
to, yeah,
wasn't
while
she?
there's not a theme that they send out to all the entries and say, hey, this is this year's theme, what we found was that, like I said, almost 40% of the quilts were about resisting, whether it was resisting oppression, resisting the patriarchy, resisting overreaching government, resisting sexism or racism, xenophobism, all of these different things. And it was really, really beautiful. There was one quilt in particular that really, really spoke to me. And I stood there for probably 5 minutes looking at this quilt and cried while I was looking at it. And it was a quilt about the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
And the message on the quilt was really touching, and reading the artist's description of the quilt was really touching. There were quilts that were the American flag, but it was dripping in blood. There were quilts that were women who had each done individual blocks on a quilt, and they had quilted their face, and next to their face they had quilted in words that men had called them over the years. And then there was like 24 of these women who did this project, and they all stitched all these blocks together and made this beautiful quilt. There was one that was that had a QR code on it that linked to the 25th Amendment, which was really, really funny.
What was the one with the errors on it that they were circling errors on?
Yeah, so this was not a resistance-themed one, but it did win first place in the category of which it was in, and the quilter, I think, had called it Mistakes, was the title of the piece. And they made this super elaborate, beautiful quilt, and there were mistakes in it, and instead of them fixing the mistakes, they went in and added these big red circle stitches around the mistakes to highlight them and to bring your attention to them. And it was really, really beautiful. So,
Well, and I think you were talking about the AIDS quilt. I remember being in college, and Eddie Myers, God rest his soul, who's now passed away. I went to Carson Newman, which was a Baptist institution, and being a closeted queer kid, meeting Eddie Myers. And Eddie was very active in the AIDS quilt movement back in the early 90s. And while he wasn't out and none of us knew what he was going through in life, this quilt was social commentary on what was going on in the Reagan administration and the ignoring of the AIDS crisis. And to see where the AIDS quilt has gone through, when it was on the Washington Mall, when it was first being put together, and it still to this day lives. Quilting, while we see it as Mamaw, it's Mamaw on fire.
yeah.
Because so many of these people have a story to tell,
Yeah.
and they just don't know a better way to tell it but in their quilting.
Yeah.
And so to think about quilting as more than just something to sleep under as I saw it,
Yeah.
but more of a social commentary of something that is protest, but also something that's storytelling. And then, when you think your journey and you've gone through seeing all this at QuiltCon, seeing all the social commentary, something unexpected happened, and you just didn't become an admirer, but you became someone who wanted to try it.
Yeah, so I was very inspired when I got back, and decided that I'm getting a sewing machine this week, and I am
Because somebody had closings today.
That's right. 2 closings today. Thank you, Lord.
Yes.
And yeah, business is okay. It's not. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's going. And we've got stuff still in the pipeline, so I'm excited about that.
But if you want him to quilt something for you, got to buy some real estate from him.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it'll be a great closing gift if you buy or sell with me. And it may happen, 6 months after you buy or sell, because they take a long time.
Totally.
But I'm getting a sewing machine. I did all the research and found a local sewing machine store. It's actually get this, it's called Rivergate Vacuum and Sewing Machines.
Mm-hmm. And we passed it 1,000 times.
Yeah, had no idea. I mean, I knew it was there, but I never thought I would go in or had any interest in going in. And
you texted me the second you got through the door. You're like,
I did.
I'm in heaven.
I'm in heaven. And they've got Miele vacuums there too, which are like the top of the line vacuums.
And you love a good vacuum.
I do love a good vacuum. My
Yeah.
Dyson V8 over there, 10 out of 10 recommend you get a Dyson V8 because it's super awesome. So I went into the store and talked to the guy, and I was like, okay, just going to be clear with you. I've never threaded a needle in my life. I've never touched a sewing machine in my life. But I just got back from QuiltCon, and I'm inspired, and I want to do it. And I could see the wheels turning in his head as he was like, okay, what is the simplest but most expensive machine that I can put him on so I make money and so that he doesn't bring it back? And he did end up taking me to like the cheapest ones in the store, which are still, $1,000. And there's certainly domestic Singer sewing machines that are like $150 that you can go get at Hobby Lobby or Walmart. But I wanted something a little more advanced with some more features that I had researched and knew were things that I would want. Because, the TISM kicked in when I got back from QuiltCon, and I was like doing hours and hours of research on machines.
Well, we always see that stuff as us and them, in the fact that I always saw myself as, there's somebody who's a photographer. Ashley Vallett is an amazing photographer. Molly Cochran is an amazing photographer. But Jeremy Ryan is an amazing photographer, but I'm not a photographer. And to get in that mentality of, wait a second, you can do this, and you've got to own it. So when you and I were talking about this quilting thing, I'm like, you got to own it.
Yeah.
You've got to say, no, you haven't been sewing since you were 12 years old. No, you don't have a grandparent who quilts constantly. We actually went to the Wilson County Fair to try to find someone to teach our whole family how to quilt. We couldn't find someone. And I remember trying to go on YouTube and learn how to take photos and go in to try to look at classes, and I found out I already knew all that stuff. And I had to literally in my mind say, don't put yourself in the box of what you don't think you are, but be that. And I think that while you haven't touched a needle and thread and you've never designed a quilt, you got to put yourself in that mentality. Because you're so obsessed with piano and you've mastered that craft. You just finished that huge Rachmaninoff piece at a level 10. You've mastered so many other things. I see this as your new Lego because you've loved Lego so long. But Lego, we're looking at $300-400 for one piece, and you're out of space. I'm looking at your set right now. We just put a ton up in your attic.
Yeah, because I ran out of storage
space. But it's got that same piece that Lego has that you like, and that's why I'm excited about it, because I think it's something that you love sharing things with people. You're just a natural gift giver. You'll go to Old Time Pottery and find Winnie the Pooh sponges and get excited about it. Go, Poppy, you
so
got
cheap.
You get excited over these little gifts. And I think about you and like as I love giving my gift of photography. I see quilting like Mara's cake making. She makes in Atlanta. I see quilting as your thing, and I know the way you really dig deeply into things. I think we'll sit and do a podcast next year at the same time, and it's going to be what you've learned about quilting, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I've absolutely got some ideas of quilts that I want to do. I'm not going to talk about them because we're just not getting into that.
Yeah.
You'll see when they're finished, and they will be resistance themed. That's all I'll say. And I did want to mention 2 other things really quickly before we move on about the history of quilting, some things that I had learned. Number one was quilting if we go back to like the suffrage movement, quilting was a way for women to get together and do something that they were expected to do, but have an opportunity to talk to each other and to plan and to figure out what their next moves were going to be and their next steps were going to be. And the men at that time didn't think anything at all about it, because it's like, oh, the women are quilting, that's what the women do. But they were using it as an opportunity to plan and to resist. If you go back even further to the days of slavery, there were lots of quilting patterns that come from tribes in Africa, and the patterns were quilted and displayed and hung outside of homes that were either resided in by slaves or by slave owners who also had slaves. And they would use these quilts to send messages to other slaves on the Underground Railroad. Mm-hmm. And they would use those patterns to indicate whether it was safe to stop, whether they needed to move on, which direction they needed to go from here. And I've got goosebumps now talking about it, because it's so incredible when you think about the history.
I was literally Googling that as you were bringing it up.
Yeah. And then, you can even go back to before then, when the Native Americans were making their quilts. You've got all the Western tribes who made these, we would probably call them ponchos. But they're these quilts that have these patterns that they made that were representative of their culture and their status in their tribes. Yeah. And so quilting is just a beautiful thing, and I'm super excited to get started on it.
And we live in an area, we live just outside the Appalachian Mountain region. And you think about Dolly Parton's Coat of Many Colors and that story, that's part of the heritage of who we are. Quilts are in such the fabric of who we are. And to think about what life of a quilt is. And you think about these pieces come from different places. I've always used this, in a previous life, I did a lot of keynote speaking. I was out all the time speaking. And one of the metaphors I always pulled in was the metaphor of the quilt. Mm-hmm. I talk about this in my fitness journey now. Mm-hmm. Every day you decide, this can be for fitness. It can be if you're trying to build your own business. If you're in school right now and you're trying, it goes for everything. Every day you must bring a square of quilt to the party. And one day you're going to wake up and you're going to have, oh, wow, I've got a scarf. Well, I can put this around my neck. And then a few days later you wake up and, oh, I've got a lap blanket. And before you know it, you have something that you've knitted together in life that can fill acres. Yeah. Because you just daily brought something. And that's how fitness was for me. That's how my business was for me. Because every day I've told you, just bring something every day to this business. If that's a phone call to someone. So there's so much imagery in quilting for me. And it's so an important piece of how I look at life. I even I showed you the graphics for a community I created when Facebook groups were really starting out. It was called The Quilt. Yeah. And how we weave people together. So for me, bringing people together, bringing situations together, bringing work together, the quilt is the core of everything I believe there. And that's why it's so special to me.
And I want to make sure that everyone knows that, no quilt is perfect. We had earlier talked about the quilt that had the imperfections in it and how the designer highlighted those imperfections in their quilt. Even every day as you're bringing that piece of fabric to whatever it is in your life that you're making a quilt of, if the seams are ripped, if there's stains on the fabric, if the color has faded, you've still brought a piece of fabric. Yep. And that piece of fabric will fit into, the cats are going crazy, that piece of fabric will fit into the block that you're making for that section of your life. And eventually when the quilt is finished, you're going to look over at that block and be able to say, I made it through that. Yeah. And although there was some pain and some hurt in that section of the quilt, it is surrounded by all of this other goodness that came from that section. Because I couldn't have built off the rest of the quilt unless I started from that section.
And every section is unique. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think this imagery is so important. And this is why this, I think, is so special to our entire family, is we understand that you could have a rooms to go life where everything matches. You have this matching nightstand, the matching everything, or you can have some variety in life. Mm-hmm. And there's something about that quilting imagery that says this piece is not perfect. This piece does not look like the other pieces, but it still has a place.
Yeah.
And I think as queer people, that's huge. You may not fit into the mold of your faith. You may not fit into the mold of your job, the mold of your family, but you still have a place. And I just think it's a beautiful thing to talk about beyond just the actual syntax of building a quilt. There's the semantics of all the artistry and imagery behind it, and I just love that.
Well, it's time for our quilting edition of Nashville Rathers. So I'm going to ask you the first question, and I think I know the answer. Handmade gift or store-bought quilt?
Are quilt specifically?
Quilt specifically.
Oh, absolutely handmade. I was thinking, if it's something, there's some things I like better store bought. I mean, there's some handmade things I'm like, I don't want that. Some people buy me something, I'm like, I know it's handmade, but that's ugly. I don't want it. But in a quilt situation, I have a Pottery Barn quilt I love. I mean, I was actually getting it today. It's in another piece of real estate we own. But man, I love that quilt.
Yeah.
Because I think there's value in all quilts, but I want to absolutely take a handmade one, and I know you're the same, right?
Yeah, I'll take handmade too.
So we touched on this earlier, and I may have been off base, but are you now bold color or are you more neutral tones?
I think there's value in both. I think, I've got quilts planned that are both. Some that are just going to be black and white, and some that are going to be full color and inspired by drag queens.
Yeah.
So, I think I'll do both. I'll say both.
I think great art is neutral. No matter what. And you say, wait, so you like neutral? No, I'm saying and this is what I've always looked at art on the wall as, if I've got a wall that is purple and I want to put an orange piece of art on there, art is neutral. And I feel the same way about quilts. While we have a backboard on our bed that is orange, I don't care what color quilt I put on that. It will go with it because it's art, and art goes with all things. So to answer the question, though, bold patterns. I want that bold piece.
Yeah. Now, would you rather start a new hobby or stick with what you know?
At this point of life, it's stick with something I know.
Yeah.
I'm at a different phase of life than you are, and the idea of now I do want to quilt. I do want to do that, but that to me seems more of I'm not trying to conquer that. You want to conquer it. Yeah. I just want to be a part of that world. So
I definitely I mean, this is a new hobby that I'm starting, and it's actually something that I do pretty often is start a new hobby. Whether it's gardening or learning how to install automotive electronics, or learning how to do home renovation projects, or now quilting. I'm always finding something new to learn and to get into. And so I'm very excited for this next journey into quilting.
So solo creative time or group workshop?
Leave me alone. Let me create on my own. That's when you know this, and I think probably by now our listeners know this as well. I value solace and solitude in healthy doses. I do like being around people and communicating and community building. But when it comes to creating and making things, I like doing it solo. And I think a lot of that comes from the first thing that I ever created on was the piano. And that was something that I did alone as a response to other things that were happening in my life. So,
well, I'm a social creature. So I wanted our family to quilt together so we have something to do together.
Yeah.
I love creating things as a team. I'm not saying you need it, but I don't need that individual credit of I did this. I love the idea of when, mom and dad had their 50th wedding anniversary. Arden had him recreate in art form the place where mom and dad had their first date. And we broke that into a quilt-like thing in art, though, in painting art. And no one knew what the finished art piece was because they were all just given a segment of it. And at their party, they were told to paint it. Now, of course, when we put it together, none of it matched because, one would be yellow, blue, and red. The other was black, white, and green. But it still created that quilt of the art. We did that as a team, and it was all of us together. And for it to come together at the end and mom and dad to say, oh, my gosh, that's the Richie Cream where we had a date. And you've seen that hang on their wall at their house now. I love that teamwork, and that just makes me so happy.
Yeah. Well, would you rather have functional art or decorative art?
Functional.
Okay.
I want my art, while I can enjoy looking at something on a wall or seeing a sculpture, I love the idea of interacting with it in some way. That's why I love quilts. To me, while that is a decorative art, it can be a decorative art. As we all know, most of us know, it's a functional art.
Yeah.
And the idea of, I think sometimes we can put things on a shelf that could mean a lot to us. Enjoy it. And I sleep under my quilts. And yes, some of them are very expensive, but we sleep under them because that's the function of it. So absolutely functional.
Yeah,
I don't know what your answer to this one is. I don't know what you're going to say on this one.
It's functional.
Really?
Functional, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like all the Lego stuff that I have is functional art.
How's that functional?
Because I can pick it up and play with it, and change it and move it around. And not that I do that.
I'm
that's
like,
more,
wait.
That's more of Micah's thing. But
Okay.
like that trumpet that's behind you,
Okay.
I can pick it up and play it. That banshee from Avatar that I got at Magic Kingdom. Quilts, functional art. And I'm okay with, having like an expensive piece of art that you hang on the wall that is just there and exists. But if I can't exist with it and appreciate it and learn new things from it and enjoy it, then I don't think I would, consider it functional. So, and I like functional.
That's a great discussion. I like this one. That was
Yeah.
good. So, I think we've both been surprised by what inspires us. I never dreamed when I bought those tickets for y'all to head to QuiltCon and the airplane to head that way that we would be sitting here today with that. But I love that inspiration.
Yeah. And, maybe this is a good opportunity for you to look around wherever you're at right now and look and see if there's something that's interesting to you around you. Maybe it is a frame, maybe it is a instrument, maybe it's a piece of furniture or a carpet or a piece of ceramics or lamp or sculpture or anything. And, find inspiration in it. Maybe it's something you could learn to do yourself. So I encourage you to do that this morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you're listening.
Yep, you just never know what's going to show up and stitch itself into your story.
That's right. This is Nashville and Beyond. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal, financial, or real estate advice. Listeners should always consult licensed professionals for guidance specific to their situation. Brian and Zach Copeland are licensed real estate agents with Compass, 615-522-5100. Music Dusty Boots by Eco Leaks, Nashville and Beyond, copyright 2026.